now start with the last session for the day, the second Big Question workshop, Sustainable Aquaculture in the Face of Climate and Aquaculture Change, the Potential Role of Digital Aquatech and AI Innovations. The moderators for this session are Professor Andy Shinn, INVE Aquaculture, Thailand, Dr. Stuart Bunting, Independent Climate Consultant, UK, Pratap Sinha, GIZ India, and Professor Karen Viverica, Auburn University, USA. The virtual moderator for this session will be Dr. Manoj Kamble, Chulalongkorn University, Thailand, and the Thai moderator would be Dr. Katakon Wangwaradetku, INVE Aquaculture, Thailand. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon once again, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this next big question topic. Again, this was one of the topics that you voted for. Do you remember we put out a number of topics you voted for? We had a lot of responses from you guys regarding this particular topic. Now, I just want to quickly set the scene. So I've got just a couple of slides just to give you a little bit of background of what we may be talking about or not. But just while they're loading up. What I first of all want to do is just give you a few examples. Now, these are going to be taken from the salmonid industry, just because there's lots of things going on there. But I do want to ground our discussion sensibly, because obviously we need to be thinking about small-scale aquaculture, and we need to be thinking about Asia and Africa. So just to give you a few examples, sorry panel, I hope you're not going to get a sore neck. But just to give you a few examples, you can see here. Oh, I'm colorblind. I can't see red. Thank you. I never know where I'm pointing. So, for example, just taking, for example, salmon production in cages, and you can see we've got this beautiful picture of a sea louse over on the side here. This is a female. They create lots and lots of problems. And of course, there's lots of innovations in trying to deal with, for example, with the removal of sea lice. So, for example, we have fancy lasers now, which actually detect sea lice on the skin of salmon, and they shoot a laser and try and kill and remove, for example, the sea lice. We have almost like facial recognition in salmon to identify individual salmon, assess their health, their growth, their biomass. We have different counting systems to assess their nutrition. We have different lighting systems to pull and manipulate the behavior of the salmon moving up and down in cages. But of course, we have to feed these animals as well. And of course, there are lots of tools linked around, for example, sensors to detect their appetite, but also to make sure that we're not getting too much waste. So we have to make sure that this is being optimized. A lot of these cages are out in deeper water. I don't know if you remember the last picture on Rohana's presentation today, but he showed this massive cage being pulled by three ships. That cage is, I think it's almost 250,000 cubic meters of production, which is being towed deep out to sea. So feeding out at sea, a lot of these farmers are not so much feeding the fish in the same way. They're more kind of computer engineers. They're sitting behind a panel of screens. They have everything optimized in terms of feeding and feed delivery. But also, for example, remote sensors, looking, for example, adverse weather patterns and things like that. So there's a whole variety of these kind of tools. If I could go to the next slide. Yeah, lovely, thank you. So just to give you a few more examples. So again, for example, we have things looking at, for example, net assessments. We have robot fish, which detect, for example, the quality of nets and make sure there's not too much biofouling or abrasion. We've already talked about, for example, monitoring environmental impacts through the analysis of eDNA barcodes. A whole variety of different predictors and tools to make sure, for example, we're trying to avoid, for example, environmental cage disaster or preventions. Things like jellyfish as well, if I could have the next one as well. Other applications, for example, also include, for example, in the selection of fish breeding as well. For example, we want to select the best families. We might be selecting for growth or resistance. But again, we have lots and lots of data, and we need to process this data. So again, we have a variety of AI tools to look, for example, the best combinations of families for breeding programs for these large-scale genotyping programs. In terms of, we've got some shrimp on the side here, for example, we also have tools for assessing Artemia and the larval, post-larval stage. We're looking at the condition of those, making sure that we have large hepatopancreases, that we have a nice uniform population of shrimp. So if I could go to the next slide. So just to ground it, that's a lot of stuff that's going on in the salmon industry. So now let's start thinking about shrimp and tilapia and catfish and the species that we're more commonly culturing, for example, in Asia and Africa. So this is one of our recent tools. This is called SnapArt. Again, this is a tool that's used to evaluate the stage of the Artemia that we're hatching. It's about optimizing, making sure that we're feeding the right stage at the right time to really get the best out of the feeds that we're giving. Again, if you could just click the next one. So for example, we also have programs whereby we can also analyze. This is actually a picture of these post-larvae that you're looking at here. So we can actually assess the condition, the size of the hepatopancreas of individual post-larvae. And then, for example, we have things like the AQ1 hydroacoustic feeding system. So again, they're just listening to the clicks that the shrimp are making as they're feeding. And again, it's about optimizing the feeding to make sure that shrimp are fed on delivery to make sure we get good growth. And then, for example, we have a suite of things like farm management apps on mobile phones to just help facilitate farmers monitor, shall we say, feeding and performance across farms and ponds. At this point, I'm going to pass you over to Stuart, because we did get quite a lot of information coming back from you guys from the online chat.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Andy. Thanks. We certainly did. So thank you very much for all the responses we had during the discussion in the lead up to the conference. And on the basis of that, we've come up with some sort of key opportunities and constraints that we've synthesized for AI in small-scale aqua farming and also digital aquatech. But I was thinking while I was sitting in the presentations today, perhaps we're being too production unit or producer-focused, producer-centric. And throughout each of the talks, I was listening out carefully for any examples that I thought might tick boxes of digital agritech and AI. So I know Professor Ben Belton was online, mentioned stress and climate change-induced stress in cultured organisms. So I think that also links into the Rather et al. Paper that was circulated before the conference, where they're talking about possibilities of monitoring behavior change in animals, and that that being a sign of increased aggression, which may detract from production. So this may be a link that we could explore further. Also thinking about value chains more broadly than production systems. Dr. Roland was talking about raw material data sets and traceability, so broadening out the discussion and the thinking. Thinking about policy, so Dr. Mike talking about UN Food Systems Summit, so there's an imperative there for us to try and tackle this at a higher level. Also planning and how to go about that, so Dr. Sahu mentioned GIS applications in climate change mitigation planning. We also have knowledge sharing, so it's very informative display outside from GIS and their SAFEC program with the firms initiative. So perhaps there's insights we can gain from what they've been doing. And also thinking in the food systems context and food and nutrition security. So Dr. Rosaldo talking about consumer promotion activity using online media channels. So broadening the discussion out and to take in all these things. So I don't know, perhaps that's what other people have been thinking if we've been going through the discussion today, or perhaps contributors would like to elaborate on what they've been able to say so far. Perhaps we've missed things. So I'd really like to hear what people think should be highlighted at this point in the discussion, and to build on people's experience of using or researching these applications. So I think this would be a good time to throw it open to the floor, perhaps.
Just to add a comment, so this discussion they're still running online, so you haven't missed your opportunity yet. So you can still dive in. If you haven't received an invite but would like to participate in these topics, then we can send you a link and you can patch in again and follow them. These will probably continue for the next couple of weeks. And then what we'll try and do is we'll then try and synthesize and summarize all of those responses and build them into an opinion paper. Okay? So just to follow Stuart's first comments, I know we have some farmers in the room. Perhaps we can start with thinking about, what do you want? What do you need in terms of your farm production, for example? What tools or what digital aquatech would help support you in your production? Yes, please.
So I can talk for farmers because I work with a lot of them, and I was one too. So actually, when you came up with that subject, I said, what are you talking about, AI? So from what I've seen, so we started out doing oxygen monitoring, and that was back in the 90s, and working with different models of oxygen sensors. The biggest problem is fouling, of course, and before, you know, you would have the sensor in the pond and a snail would crawl across the sensor and that would show low DO, so it'd turn the aerator on, and then the snail would change its mind and crawl back the other way, and then the aerator would go off, and then it would turn back around, and so we were having problems with that. Also, we happened to have put the trial units on some 1 acre ponds that tended to attract lightning, and so we had some problems there. But eventually they improved all these things, and the oxygen sensor coupled with the paddle wheel aerator that could turn on automatically and you could set the points, that helped the family farmers in Alabama who typically manage at least 150 acres of water. It helped them sleep at night. So, you know, all your emergencies were coming at night, and they were also during the day feeding the fish and everything. So these family-owned farms, which were rather large in western Alabama, were allowed to still manage these large farms because of these oxygen sensors. It really helped. On the smaller scale, say family farms in Africa and Southeast Asia, the biggest assistance I've seen for information sharing has been market pricing. There are several programs led by different donor agencies to give market prices for commodities, but they haven't been doing it for fish. In Uganda, they did have a Nile perch fishery price tracking. But one of the biggest problems the small-scale farmer has is that they're selling to middlemen who tell them the price they're taking, and the farmer has no other information to compare that with. So that's a big help to farmers if you can get it to work correctly. The other thing about knowledge sharing is some of these fish farmers group that are online, now they're saying, you know, I need fingerlings or I have fingerlings, and to locate inputs and to locate markets for their products. And that's been a very big help, and I think it will be growing. So the last thing is these automatic feeders. So when we teach, when I teach feed management, I'd say, okay, are you a feeder or a dumper? You know, so the feeder watches the fish and reacts to how they are reacting, and they'll give more feed or they'll stop feeding. A dumper just throws and goes. So an automatic feeder is a dumper, right? We have seen automatic feeders putting the feed in while the fish were dead from the night before from low oxygen. So, but the new feeding systems, that AQ1, we trialed on our shrimp farms in Alabama, and they are feeders because they get feedback from the fish, just like somebody else observing if the fish are eating. You got better FCRs, better total yields, and faster. And we tried our best to outsmart that system, and with our best feeders, with feeding different frequencies and everything, but the AQ1 always outdid us. So that's quite a thing. But it's not a cheap system, so if you have small ponds, it's not going to really be cost effective. It's really better for larger ponds. But so smart feeders, I would call them, it's not a schedule, it's a feedback system. Those are the kind that can really, really help.
Thanks, Karen. Just to add on the farmer thing, the GIZ project, the aquaculture project, Sustainable Aquaculture Project, we also attempted with the 6,000 farmers to employ a mobile-based app system to see if it works. Whether it will work or not work, there are many questions. And the core idea was that how can they run their business, whether it's an individual, I mean, even if you are an individual and you are connected with 10 or 15 or 100 farmers, or you're running a cooperative or whatever, how can you run that system with the app? And the first question we try to address is, who is going to pay for that app? And what happens after the payment is done, infrastructure is developed, how is the AMC is going to be worked out and will maintain its contract? And after we pull out, who is going to continue paying for that? How is the cloud is going? So all those questions were so complicated that we could not go into any system which needed an external digital company who we can hire and get an app made, because then it will become their business, not. So who is paying? So that question we finally solved by developing a system which is free of cost on Kobo and Excel based, and coming up on mobile. But then we looked, we know that mobile penetration is quite good, 80% Android mobile in rural areas. But farmers are not using mobile to enter data. They're watching YouTube or playing a Ludo in India. So that's what it is used for, and not for entering data, of course. And why would they do that? And we faced a lot of challenge, and we come to a conclusion after a year of working with 6,000 plus farmers that it's not the farmer who might be interested in doing it. It's the intermediary, one person who is linked between the, let's say, institution and the farmer, 10, 15 farmer. That person could do it and help the farmer to enter minimum 4 to 5 set of data, not more than that. Frequency could be once per month or once 2 months, not more than that. It's becoming really difficult, and there has to be some motivation linked. Otherwise, that data will not be entered. So that was a result of learning why somebody will even feed a data. Like, why would you do that? It's boring. Who will do that? So another challenge we faced, that because it's a free system, we could not reach to that stage that we can give a feedback instantly. Farmers are asking feedback instantly. That is cost, and that is app. That's another digital company who's going to make money out of it. And because these data are customized to their business, all those apps which are given by any Google-type global kind of big thing, they are not customized to your business. They are customized to their business, not your business. So the moment you go into app, then it becomes complicated, and we still have to find a way that how a farmer we can give an instant feedback. Stop here.
Thank you. I've just seen Anton's hand go up because One of the other big questions we had was about data security. So, and Anton, is that something you're going to comment on, yeah?
Hi, Anton Immink from Think Aqua. I'm going to comment on a lot of things, if I can be indulged for a few minutes. You've all kind of skirted around this point and some of these issues. I think the points on the wall are kind of more around the technical issues, challenges, to adoption, mobile network access, cost perhaps. But I've been involved in quite a few projects around the use of digital technology, one with Andy particularly sitting up there, with farmers in Thailand, in Indonesia. I've also explored this in Africa as well. The fundamental challenge that we've observed in all of these projects is the business case, basically. What's the value proposition for the farmer? And in most of the cases where we've been working with smallholder farmers, even in shrimp, where people say, well, that's a higher value product, it must be really hard in tilapia or carp or something. Even in shrimp, if a farmer, even a farmer who owns maybe 4 or 5 farms, if he can go and talk directly to the farm manager at least once a week, that seems to be enough. The farm manager can send him a WhatsApp, a line message, a phone call if panic sets in, to discuss any problems and challenges. They don't need a mobile phone-based app to address this problem. In salmon farming, there is a middle management level, touching a little bit on this discussion about who actually wants the data. There is a middle management level in salmon farming companies who want this data, who want to understand the challenges, who want to know what's going on. So I think when we think about the value proposition for small-scale farmers, and not, as I said, not just for the smallest of small-scale farmers, it's not really there for just using a mobile phone app. I think that idea of feedback to the farmers is actually very interesting. Is that a value that could be given back? And we've seen companies like Jala in Indonesia, for example, exploring this, and providing market prices as a mechanism for engaging farmers. In the project with Andy here in Thailand, we were looking at whether you could give an early warning about the possibility of disease in your neighborhood to shrimp farmers. But all of these things, of course, are challenged if the farmer has to spend some time putting some data in to start with. The tech companies have been exploring some of these challenges and trying to overcome some of these hurdles. Andy, you can stop me at any point, by the way. To overcome some of these hurdles. And as Karen said, maybe what farmers want are apps where you can buy and sell products or get your inputs or send your fish to market. Some of these tech companies, like eFishery, are built on that Aqua Exchange, providing access to inputs, providing advice back to farmers. This is a model that companies that started just by simply providing tech have moved into, realizing that they can't just sell a piece of technology. They have to sell a more comprehensive service, and actually the value proposition for the farmer very often is getting paid for their product at the time of sale. It's not even maybe based on the use of the technology, but it's not even perhaps based on that. It is their uptake is not based on the value of the technology per se, but on just the value of the proposition of buying the product at a particular point in time. Or providing preferential access to inputs at better prices. So I guess, and then we think about other actors in the value chain, right? Then it's not necessarily that the value proposition is for the farmer or the farmer's the main focus. Feed companies, health management companies, all these companies would actually place more value on the data and understanding what's happening on the ground at the farm level. So I don't think we should keep it very kind of technical or simple, it's much more complicated about the human condition, about business centrally, right? There's all the trust issues that can come with this, but key is who is the real value for, and I think most of the startups in the world will now tell you that when they said, oh, there's 100 million tons of aquaculture production out there that I must be able to tap into and make some money out of, they've realized that the actual proposition for them, the tech companies, is minuscule and very expensive to reach that last mile to the small-scale farmer in particular.
Thank you very much for mentioning trust there, because, for example, when we were first speaking to farmers, they were like, well, where is this data being stored? Who's looking at it? Who's going to use it? Can my neighbor tap into it? There were lots of concerns about data security. Jarul, I saw your hand go up behind Anton as well. Maybe we can pass you.
Hello. Jarul here. So Andy's previous question to the farmers, what the farmer wants. So after working in Nepal, India and Bangladesh for last 15 years with the freshwater aquaculture, I understood, and I myself always found in a puzzle what to answer the farmers, because their question is mainly one of the important questions related to the digital technology, AI or any tools. First, should I look into the farmer's pocket, or should I suggest that if you use your available money, then you can earn this much? So how it is? I understand that these technologies are relative to individual farmers and their needs, but whether I should suggest them that, okay, how much, this much you can invest to purchase the technology, or if you purchase this, then you will get this much money through this technology. So I think that there should be discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you. So, if you'd like to go next, sorry, you did have your hand up. Thank you.
Thank you. Last time I saw a system in India while in my state, Odisha, in Sifa yard, where the private company, they saw a system. It's run by solar panel, the power system. It has a pH sensor and also oxygen meter. And one more thing, 3 things is there to control the pond water parameter. So when I asked the price of this, they said 600,000 Indian rupees. So I have 1 acre of land, pond size. I was thinking I will make 100,000 a year profit, but how I want to buy this 600,000 system? And they said there is subsidy from Odisha government, but still it's very cost effective. So maybe we need this system, but it's not, I don't think a farmer, like marginal farmer can afford this kind of price. Thank you.
Thank you very much for raising that, because we were just talking about small-scale aquaculture. And Jens, I'm glad you've just picked up the microphone. I know Karen also has some comments on that as well, but maybe over to you first, Jens.
Thanks a lot. We have been working a lot in Africa in the last years, where tilapia is grown. And we did a lot of training also on natural productivity, feed, supplementary feeding, quantity of feeds, and all these kind of things, which is of course related to the biomass in the pond. And since they are not growing any monosex tilapia, so it's a mixed sex tilapia, and biomass estimations is impossible. We never found a way to understand really how much fish is in the pond after some time, because you get all different sizes, you get reproductivity, some die, some don't, some get bigger, some stay smaller. You just see at one point of time that there is starvation going on, and then there is stunted growth. So this you definitely want to prevent. So this is why I'm asking whether there is any cheap, really cheap, that cheap methods available to just roughly estimate the biomass in the pond of fish of different sizes. I think this would be for many people, especially when they want to venture into the use of formulated feeds, which is a serious investment and has to be adapted to the quantity of fish. And this is for those farmers with mixed sex tilapia, I think, a nightmare. It's impossible. We didn't manage.
Back to these, or do we want to take another question? Okay, back to these monitors. It's even worse than that because you have to calibrate those things. And so I had probably, I only had maybe 4 oxygen monitors on my station, 350 ponds. And that's all I could afford. And I only put them on the big ponds with the high biomass. But it still was quite an endeavor just to keep them accurate. And so I've been looking for these cheap oxygen sensors that are accurate, but there was no way to put them on all the ponds. So you have to judge the value of the fish that you could lose versus the cost of the sensor, which is what you did effectively. So it's only going to be for big ponds with a high value. We could not get our farmers in Alabama to even buy an oxygen meter for ages until they calculated the value of the fish and what a loss would cost them. And then they could agree to it. So yes, so these things are good for researchers, and universities own them or projects buy them, but smaller scale farmers, it's just not appropriate, I would say. Unless you can borrow one for a time to understand your pond. The biomass in the pond. When we teach feed management, we tell people feed as much as the fish will eat in 15 minutes. Don't leave the pond until they've finished that feed, which prevents overfeeding very well, by the way. We don't feed to the biomass like the fry and fingerlings or the reproduction. We just feed to the main objective fish and don't follow a feed table except use it as a guide because you never know how many fish you have. So you still need that person with good observational skills to be feeding, and it's really hard to teach that. Some people you can never teach them. Okay, you just have to find, by the way, the person who determines the profitability of the fish farm is the feeder. So don't use the lazy guy that doesn't know anything to feed. Use somebody who's thinking. They don't have to be educated, but they have to be smart and have, some kind of sense for how the fish are feeling. And that's about as good as you can do, I would say. And remember, you need to establish a limit. Even if you have a lot of fish and they still seem hungry, don't feed them because you might not have them the next day.
Hello. A couple of years, I think around 4 or 5 years back, one Israeli company, Dagon, they demonstrated one IoT-based called smart aquaculture system in India's northeastern state of Meghalaya. So the Chief Minister was interested. So they presented it from CIFRI and CIFA. They were called for evaluating that because it cost around I think, if I remember correctly, $300,000 US, the cost of the whole thing. Everything that we were shown, everything was there, including RAS and all those things. Then we put the Secretary of Fisheries that he was wondering the economics will it be cost effective. Then when we calculated, it took around 30 years because the value of the fish that were to be produced, calves, were not that costly. Then we presented that and finally it did not come through. Now, but AI and IoT-based things, somewhere it will be useful in the future. Like Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, they have prepared an app, simpler version for monitoring water quality. Then They had many things. We said, "Ki bring down to water quality there," because if we take care, like there were many discussions yesterday, if the environment is good, this disease occurrence will be good. And similarly, demand feeder may be something like that. Some solutions, again, that will be for smart aquaculture for some segment. But for small-scale farmers, we have variety of situation in Asia, whatever I have seen, starting from India and all other these ones. So I think we need to have different solutions for different resource user groups, depending on their capacity, financial capacity, then their farm holding size and all. I think we go in stages. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Normally, in the small-scale farmer or marginal aquaculture farms, we require the pre-management and post-management practices. So in the pre-management practices, normally we do a pre-management and post-management, we do the primary productivity measurement. So that will give a correct idea how much natural food is available in that, in a small scale. So during pre-management and post-management, if you're getting the ideas of how much biomass is there, how much primary productivity plankton is there, so whether this will possible to apply this digital aquatech or AI in a small-scale farmers, again, whether this will be economically feasible or not, that's again a question mark for that. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I don't know if anybody remembers the appropriate technology movement, because I'm just casting back as I hear this conversation. And Fritz Schumacher, he was British with a little bit of German on the grandmother's side, let's say. But I'll just read you out what the main thrust of the movement was. It was to encompass technological choice and application that is small scale, affordable by locals, decentralized, labor-intensive, energy-efficient, environmentally sustainable, and finally, locally autonomous. And I think that kind of chimes in a little bit with some of the things you were saying again. You know, the marginal cost of these things is going to be much higher with scale. Intensity and scale tend to co-vary. So, you know, we're talking less intensive, not necessarily, but smaller scalers tend to be less intensive. Perhaps it's not necessary above a certain threshold, many of these technologies and AI. And perhaps we need to think along those lines a little bit more.
Hello? Okay. For me, that if I want to promote the using of AI or smart sensor for the small-scale farmer, I think I will suggest the open source the program, because right nowadays like a microcontroller or some DIY subject is quite cheap, and it will promote the how to tinkering by themselves to them. I think this will be promote the use of smart sensor and everything in the small scale. Yeah. Okay.
Your comment.
Yeah, that's true.
I fully agree to what you said, Francis. This is why I also believe that there is a lot of not artificially intelligent solutions, practical, really basic solution. You take a glass of the water and you look and you can roughly see what is in there. So it's easy. You don't need any IT or anything for this. But I think this discussion should also circle around what IT potentially can do in this context. And I think the criteria is there that it has to be cheap, that cheap really, so that it's affordable for really any farmer, and that it provides a significant benefit, let's say. And these solutions I also haven't seen much in digital solutions so far. They are adapted to industry size, they are expensive, they are big scale and all this. For small scale farmers, it's mainly reduced to apps, to some kind of communication parts, but some really technical innovations I don't know any, but maybe there are some.
Just to add, I mean, we all, yeah, Federica.
Yeah,
please.
maybe to add to that, I was having our example in Madagascar in mind, right? When it comes to mobile applications, and there is roughly no internet to reach local farmers. I mean, they have not the fancy mobile phones; they have really the old-fashioned ones. So we were working with SMS to get weather information to them in order to make them aware when they should stock, when they should, let's say, harvest before strong weather events. And then we further developed this app to an online marketplace where they can say, okay, now I'm harvesting and I have to offer something to you. So I think to add to your criteria, it needs to be also locally adapted, yeah? Because sometimes we're getting so techy and enthusiastic about it, but look at Madagascar and, let's say, the internet there and the availability of internet.
Just to add on that, we know from the tech industry that as we go down with the price, you are becoming the product. If it is free like Google or Facebook, you are the product. So yes, exactly. So you are the product. So if we go absolutely down with price in this industry, I think feed companies are going to make you the product for the small. Like I'm talking about small scale, meaning you having 0.3 acres to 0.5 acres. Like these are the small scale farmer. Yes, they need it cheap, and that's why what we tried is open source. So that was free, and you are not becoming the product. That's what we tried, but the problem which we are facing right now is farmer liked it, but they are not feeding the data. It's the intermediary who's feeding the data, but then they want an immediate feedback, and we were unable to do it so far, and we are yet to find a better motivation factor for the intermediary to continue to feed at least, he was talking about once a week. I'm talking about once in at least 2 months. And only 4 to 5 data set from that farmer record book you see on the table. We knew that digital is not going to work that much, so we put that farmer record book with 6,000 farmers. You don't give us data, doesn't matter, don't use, you won't, but note down if you can with the physical hard copy, so that in case you forget, then this intermediary can pick up that just 4 to 5 data, and not all the data all the month, maybe 1 or 2 data every month or 2 months in frequency. Thanks.
Thank you. Very nice topic. I'd like to comment a few things. First is, AI is not just software, it's also a lot of hardware, like atomic feeders you mentioned. A lot of like sensors, even satellite images, satellite remote sensors are very important. And in China, we also use like drones, UAV to as a feeder, to feed minke crab, because minke crab normally is farmed very extensively in very big area. Using drone can reduce like 50% of labor input. Is that a good thing? Increase productivity, labor productivity. In general, it's a good thing, I think, but it reduces the number of job employment. So some may be affected by that. And for AI, most worries me is aquaculture is very diverse. There's so many different species, hundreds of species, a lot of different systems, from extensive to intensive system. And the most important system now is the pond system. And the pond is a semi-closed, semi-open system and affected by a lot of different factors. So pond are very different from each other. Even close ponds, the water parameter, the microorganisms are very different, could be very different, And all these ponds, all these systems, they require different management. I think AI can make a very important contribution to that, but it's very difficult because now we still need to collect a lot of data from beginning. And we also need to turn this data into information, into management measures, and start use this kind of AI. And some systems may be easier to use AI, like cage culture in the ocean, because water quality is more stable, more unified than pond system. And also the indoor recirculating system, maybe it's easier to use AI. So some system maybe it's easier to use AI, I think. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much for making the comment about drones, which Jens goes to answer your question a little bit about how do we determine the biomass, for example, in green culture ponds. Just going back to the drones question, I know we have another question at the back there, but can I ask, do you know anything about the costing of drones and access to that material? And do we have anybody with experience of using drones? Okay, Anton, would you be willing just to comment on?
We undertook a pilot in Indonesia for the use of drones to sample the productivity of shrimp ponds and surrounding waters. We weren't counting shrimp using drones. We were looking at chlorophyll A concentrations primarily. They're in theory cheap, but who's the data for? If you're a farmer with half a dozen ponds or one pond, you don't need a drone to sample that. So again, who's it for, basically? At the moment, you have companies like Galaxy out of India who are using satellites in a way that will basically make the idea of drone technology potentially redundant, and some of actually water quality sampling directly, because they can give us data even on greenhouse gas emissions from ponds, basically using satellite data. So it's just a matter of cost for accessing that data for an individual farmer.
Wenbo, can I ask you a supplementary question before you answer the first one? I was just in your presentation you had the IMTA, but in the bay, and it was zoned, or I was wondering how that had been planned, if the government had a role in zoning in that sort of situation, or more generally in China, and if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to add the drone in China used as feeder in aquaculture. It costs like $5,000 to $10,000 per drone, and it has capacity of 25 to 50 kilogram feed per trip, and it lasts like 20 to 30 minutes using one battery, but it can change battery. So it's very suitable for extensive system like minty crab. We also use for like microbertium prawn farming. Also, monodon is suitable for this kind of drone. To answer your question, China is a bit different. We have a top-down system. All the land, all the sea is owned by country. It's national owned. So the government is very powerful, to allocate land or sea area to farmers. So we have a central. It's not a central planning, but we have planning, and especially for this kind of sea farming, ocean farming. That's planning for farm zones. It's like zoning approach. Thank you.
Yes, I think it's your turn. Yes.
Okay, so I'll try to make it quick. See, what I just wanted to highlight is there are often, while we are discussing a lot of solutions, at times we tend to forget what these smallholder farmers really want, right? Because there are two aspects which I would like to highlight, which I have often, after interacting with them, we have often found out. One is, especially in India, fish markets without proper infrastructural support operate in a very, in a different manner, where if the demand of a particular fish market is, let's say, 10 quintals of fish for a particular day, if the 11th quintal arrives on the same day, there is suddenly a big crash for all market prices, right? And it's at the end of the day, with the farmer has to pay for it, right? So the cost of cultivation being, let's say, 100 INR, Indian rupees, per kg, at times goes down to 90 rupees per kg of selling price, just because of these aspects where the farmer fails to predict that on a particular day, how much fish is going to arrive on that particular market. And you won't believe, maybe another market just 20, 30 kilometers from that is having a fish rate of 120 rupees per kilo, right? Just so there is a glut in one and there is a shortage in another. And why don't we have a connection in between? Maybe AI or maybe the technology has an answer today, right? So that is one part, which actually, if you go down the value chain, it actually enhances the risk, the uncertainty, and all that in the minds of the farmer, right? That is one part. Second part is, whenever a farmer opens a bag of feed, right, the first question that comes to his or her mind is, what's in this, right? And how much am I going to gain out of this? There, on the pack, there is definitely the protein percent, fat percent, everything is written, but is it really that, right? So there is a big question behind that. Can we just have a small machine? I don't know how much it will cost. It's for the technical people to decide. But can we just have a small, if we can have such a machine in a gold ornament store, which can tell you the percentage of gold within a minute, why can't we have a small testing kits of feed, at least at the grassroots level? And to reduce the cost, we do have a structure, especially in a country like India, which we often term as the farmer-producer companies or the farmer-producer organizations, where it's a collective of farmers that come together to do a common business. So that becomes a medium for reducing the cost of such a, if at all it becomes expensive for one or two individuals, they can share the cost. And we do have custom hiring center models in agricultural models where a larger expensive technology is used by 1,000, 2,000 farmers at the same time to reduce in a service delivery model. So, so my point basically is like, what I feel is, the technology which is required need not be always very complex, need not actually be rocket science. They can be, because today, how are they operating? They are simply operating using, saying what exactly Anton said, that they're using WhatsApp, trying to understand which market has what prices. There's an informal network, and you ask any fish farmer in India, they would definitely tell you that there is an informal network amongst themselves, how that operates. So all we need is a better formalization, a better management of that, and in bits and pieces. So trying to solve one problem at a time, maybe not, taking it as a whole, everything as a whole. Yeah.
So knowing the feed approximate analysis, in the meeting in Indonesia this last time, there was a handheld NIR, near infrared, and I thought, oh, finally, people have been asking me about this, especially these small-scale feed makers. But I know that for NIR, you have to calibrate the machine to your ingredients. So you have to send in a bunch of samples to get it calibrated. So I was asking them about it, and finally I said, so what's the price? Can I, how much can I buy one for? They said, oh, it's not for sale. It's for our customers who also buy this and this and this. And it turned out to be out of the realm for the people I was looking for. But so there is some technology there, but it doesn't quite meet the actual needs, okay? So it's still based on feed mills that are large enough. I don't think we'll ever get that price down. The hiring of different technologies so farmers can share, we actually have done it a little bit in some of the projects I've worked with in Africa and a little bit here in Cambodia. We brought in oxygen meters In Uganda, we brought in about a dozen of them, and we put them out on farms. And they weren't very expensive ones, but I figured, and I told the farmers this, use it all the time, but guess what the DO is going to be before you measure. So you get used to what you're thinking it's going to be. And by the time it breaks, you will understand your system. And that was about all we could do. In Cambodia, we have oxygen meters that can be loaned out to farmers. And I think that's a good thing for like a farmers group or a cooperative. If they can get a good, decent oxygen meter and they learn how to calibrate and maintain it, then I think that would be a very useful use of some of their money. But they really do need to be able to function without it too, in case, you know, it's not their turn to use it that day. But in appropriate technology, so I was in this training program in Nigeria. One of the farmers got up and said, I can tell the DO of my water by spitting in it. And I said, what? He said, it's the way the spit dissipates after you spit in the water. If it stays together, and I don't remember, you said it means it's high or low, and if it goes apart real fast, it means something else. And so I said, okay, we have a good oxygen meter, and after this training, I'm going to send the technician over, and we're going to have you spit in different tanks and figure out what the oxygen is. It didn't work, by the way, but we had data then. So be careful. There's a lot of appropriate technologies that haven't been tested, so be careful.
I see a number of hands going up. So first, Dr. Sahu, and then the gentleman at the back. Yeah.
Well, I was listening all those things. We are a bit concerned about the price, which is a major issue when we are thinking about the small-scale farmers. Probably we have to come out with first what type of technology or AI-based technology which will be really utilized by the small-scale farmers. Think about maybe 70 to 80% of Indian small-scale farmers, they have an Android mobile as on date. We have extensively used two of our apps. One is for fish disease reporting, where in that app, a farmer can get in different languages, so many languages are there, different languages are inbuilt, common diseases are there, the farmer can read, and the farmer can immediately take 2-3 photographs. It will directly come to the diagnostic laboratory. If there is huge mortality, it will be immediately addressed by the team through the National Surveillance Program. Or else, if there is less mortality, normally we used to advise some kind of first aid type of advice we used to give. That has been extensively used. That is one of the things. Another marvelous app which has been developed for freshwater aquaculture system, it is named as Matsya Setu. You will get a good number of video learning modules on different aspects of aquaculture. It has several modules in several languages, Indian languages. The farmers can easily download it, read it, and utilize it. And it has a e-marketplace. It has also reporting fish disease. Everything is inbuilt. And whole system is connected to our one Ashoka very good server on the ICAR system. Whole data is being stored. You can process the data. You can utilize the data for secondary applications. It is applicable. So the farmers, perhaps if when we are thinking or talking about the small-scale farmers, that would have been a very good approach. There are some more systems what as a research organizations we have developed. It is named as Aqua Nirnaya. We are mapping the aquatic bodies throughout, for example, a block level. How many ponds are there? How much water retention is there? How many days water is being retained? And what is the exact amount of water is there? And what type of technology it is suitable? So for a policy level, it will be very, very effective, which can be utilized using AI-based technology. You were also mentioning about drone. In fact, in Government of India has given drones to each individual blocks throughout the country. And it's quite cheap. It has different versions. You can apply medications. We have been demonstrating, every trainees, we are demonstrating how to apply drone in field conditions, applying medication, applying feeds if it is a larger type of ponds. And also we are looking into how to go for sampling of the water for further analysis. One recent thing we have developed that is automatic harvester, fish harvester system. Because nowadays the concept of getting live fish in the market is being taken care. And if you are going for harvesting for a bigger ponds, it's very expensive. Very expensive. You need to invest a much, and you have to drag the net, all those things. So what we have done, we have developed a very low cost harvesting system where you can, the small fish, it will escape, the larger fish will be trapped, and it will be attracted through automatic feeders or sensor-based feeders, and where it is fitted also there itself. So it is a virtually smart type of pond system. Technologies are being developed. So it is not so far. If a country like India, yes, there are several small-scale farmers. There are also small, big farmers. So we have to first develop the technology, and automatically, just like a mobile phone, when we initially it was started, it was so expensive. When number of farmers will come forward, slowly it will go down. And particularly, we have been working into the drone-based sampling system, looking into the chlorophyll content of the pond, and we can say how much primary productivity, as it was mentioned. So it has been also looked into, but it needs a huge amount of robust data to finalize all those things. Otherwise, as she was mentioning, the sensors, oxygen sensors. In fact, we are utilizing the oxygen sensors to automatically start the aeration system. So it needs a huge amount of robust data to say whether we need to fertilize the ponds to increase the primary productivity. All those things, it needs to study. But development is very, very essential. And for a small-scale farmers, price is definitely a cost, but they do have Android mobiles. So we should come out with some kinds of apps which will be very, very helpful to them, as he was mentioning about the market. So probably those type of things, it should be inbuilt in those apps. The farmer should know today morning itself, today what is the price, whether I need to go for harvesting or not. So those kind of, they are already in the group, WhatsApp group, all those things, it is there. Only thing, we have to spread the message. Once it will be used rigorously, probably tomorrow itself, AI is the, maybe the second thought for all those things. And because you all know, as he was mentioning, labor is the biggest challenge as on date. So we have to switch over slowly, whether it is a large-scale farmer or a small-scale farmer. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Just 1 minute, I will supplement to what our Director Shifa has told. The price information on e-marketplace is really needed for small-scale farmers, because like Mandal has rightly pointed out, sometimes there is a glut, and because fish is a perishable commodity, they cannot wait, they have to sell at whatever price is available. In a discussion in my area, one son of a fish farmer, he developed an app for predicting the price and reporting of the price. But then maintenance of that is itself a costly affair. So there maybe government or NGOs, they have to take this ones, maybe some institutes or some support is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have five hands up. So I think it's the gentleman at the back, then it's Ripon, then it's Frederica, then it's Rohana, and then Dongha. So it's the gentleman at the back first of all.
Vivek.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Vivek Anand. I'm from GIZ India. I work in the livelihood domain and with various activities. And recently I was part of this AI workshop which is trying to develop a digital platform for exchange of information between service providers and farmers. Now, as Pratap shared right in the start, that there is a farmer's record book and they're not filling it, somebody else will come and fill it. What is the incentive? Providing things for free, and I'll go a step further and talk about incentivizing farmers to write that information to start with. So that's one point, because most of these AI companies are struggling with data. They don't have data to process. At least, and all of them keep talking about hours of voice data related to culture systems. I wouldn't go into the culture system per se as far as technology is concerned, but in case of smallholders, the system of institutions has come in for meeting the objective of providing better incentives to the farmers, aggregation, processing, and all these things. When we are working through these institutions, why not, and then these institutions are acting as a platform between farmers and the service providers, big companies, profit-making companies. Why not some portion of the profit go to the farmers for some period of time, till that point when these technologies, at least AI at least, is comfortable enough to provide accurate information to the farmers. This was the point that I was thinking through all this discussion. I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek.
Could I ask you a quick question about the data you've been collecting? I think one objective was to have some financial planning or predictions about farm profitability or performance. So was there any insights in that regard in providing a sort of financial service to small-scale producers? Thank you.
In all the interactions that I've been having with farmers as to everything that you talked about, they seem very reluctant to talk about that. They are doing their things, then there are people, their life, these people who are providing services have very little to do with their entire life, right? So I don't know why they are doing it, why they're not interested. For example, we have a farmer here and he was talking about the subsidy that the government is giving, 90% subsidy for using a technology on their field. Now, he's still thinking whether I should be using that or not. He's the progressive farmer. That's why he's using it. What's the incentive for a common person or somebody who has already left that occupation and for some portion of the year he's engaging into that? The major income is coming from some other source, right? So in case of India, especially in case of Bihar, from where I come, so there, the income portfolio is so diverse that this is one activity. There are much more to that, right? So what is the incentive for that farmer? If it's not direct, not in terms of money, and then what motivates that farmers to put all this information together? Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. I just add a small comment to your question. If things are government funded, like Sahu sir said, many things are covered risk, everything is taken by government, so it's not going towards business case which you have posed. So business is taken out from the equation, things are taken by government, voila. But as soon as we come to business case, what you're saying, I try to ask big development-based digital company from US to India to all over the world, asking one simple question: can you come up with a business case so that farmer producer organization or cooperatives can, you can deal on a business basis, what you said. I couldn't get a response, and they just happily, smartly left our room, and they never came back to us.
Thank you. Follows what Anton was saying. Ripon, I think you're next, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the points I would like to mention about the uses of artificial intelligence in aquaculture. There are a lot of good things we are discussing here. I think we're the researcher and developing people here. But possibly here, if we could have the interaction with the farmers directly, the small-scale farmer, what they think, that is very important. Because, you know, I have read an article, it is published in Nature, and how AI impacts on human behavior, you know. Thing is that it was studied on the university students, and it shows that the use of artificial intelligence, you know, reduce the decision-making power of the students, as well as it made the students, you know, lazy. It is young level. But if we see the rural context, in the farmers level, you know, aquaculture is always, you know, changing, innovations that is mostly done by the farmers themselves, because physical, chemical, biological process in the pond, in the system, social system, market systems, their individual interactions, they have make their decisions, they have organized their association, they bargain with the governments and other, you know, stakeholders. In the whole decision-making process is generally, you know, generated in the society. And that makes them learn one by another in the society. And if we, you know, encourage too much, you know, AI for everything under a control system, then farmers possibly will be individualized. And ultimately, like our society, like we already become individual. I use the mobile phone, you know, getting away from the other people and making ourselves individualist and making them lazy and making them poorly capable to make the decisions. And these kind of, you know, things might be happening in the future. That's why in this kind of discussion, I think anthropologists and sociologists need to be involved. What they think at the farmers level, grassroots level, this kind of discussion should be happened. And this kind of, you know, AI uses should be limited at the small scale level in a small number of areas, like water quality monitoring might be, and what else? Maybe feed quality assessment, and then what else? There might be another, you know, intelligence that could tell the farmers about the pathogens developing in the ponds. And this is my comments, but it needs huge discussion, definitely involving farmers and anthropologists. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There's some great thought-provoking comments there. Frederica, Rohana, I think you were next. Rohana?
Without that. Thanks. I'm just taking, of course, I've been listening, and accessibility and cost. So you start saying that potential of digital aquaculture, it's promising potential. You showed some pictures, videos, you know, in salmon farming, you know, high tech, very promising, and it's been used, right, and it's operating. So we are now talking about small scale people, right? I think small scale is a very collective word. There are many small scale people who can afford. There are different, you know, sort of levels of small scale. We need to understand which level of small scale is possible and which level of small scale is not possible. Don't leave everything as small scale is difficult because they can't afford. No, that I don't think it's a correct sort of assessment, right? So different layers of small scale. And then second, what exactly a smallholder needs. I think it came from the gentleman over there. Different levels of small scale, small farmers need different levels of information to improve. At the end of the day, what they want to improve productivity, production, reduce the cost, and more profit. Simple, right? What can AI do in a band of small scale to be able to do that? And if you take this small scale, not as a challenge, but as a business and an opportunity, you can design the AI requirements in a way it is affordable also to them because it's a collective. So you're talking about not a single, but you're talking about collectively hundreds of farmers, thousands of farmers. Initially, of course, there's a cost, you need to think, but then consider it as a business. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very eloquently put, because when we were first talking about these big topic discussions, talking with Jens and talking with Francis, we were talking about small scale aquaculture, medium small scale aquaculture, and large small scale aquaculture. But a great comment, and you're absolutely right. We need some good case studies here. Dongha, I think you were next, and then Francis. I think Dongha first. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. I agree with Rohana that the small scale is too much, diverse. If you compare small scale in Africa, small scale in Asia, and small scale in Europe, it's totally different. So I would say that I would recommend to you the term intensive and super intensive. Yeah. So to say that how much stocking density and investment that people put in, and I believe that digital aquatech and AI is more suitable for intensive and very need for super intensive. Because in that case, we cannot, when you put so many animals into small volume and environment cannot, afford. So at that time, you need to monitor very often. So at that time, I think AIs and aquatech have a lot of, market there. Come back to the question that you asked, what farmer need or want? So I put myself I have the chance to work and interact with African farmers. So I joined some training for Africa, and then many farmers came and they asked a lot of questions. It's not related to the training. It's related to something else. That's something that they need, but not related to something that we want to give them. Okay. So some question like, the growing perceptions about that when they culture tilapia, they need to use only commercial feed. That's some young guys that I know. It means that something wrong in some way, that if without commercial feed, you cannot culture tilapia. That is what they believe. Okay. So I really like the presentation from Professor Karen yesterday, how to experience to culture fish over 20 years without commercial feed. If I'm a farmer, I need that one. In the African farmer, I really need that one. And I need, when people talk about stocking density, do not stock or not because that will be the problem, whatever. So what is appropriate? They don't know. They ask about that. So they ask what is overstocking, what is the good stocking. And they also believe, they don't know that, they need to rely on the seed. They need to buy the seed. They don't know how to produce it. With tilapia is super easy, right? In Asia, many people can do it easily. But in Africa, they can't. They don't know how to do it. And they don't know what to manage, what happens when disease occurs. What action they need to do. They ask some question like that, or what routine monitoring that they need to prevent disease. So I hope, I put myself as a farmer and I expect that we have some kind of AI to train them about that. Very specific questions. And this is from only my point of view, and I believe that to be able to understand what farmers need, we need a research, we need a survey. Yeah. And I hope that we have the survey, and then we have the chance to address all of the questions by using an AI to respond. For example, for tilapia farmer, some very basic questions that, what is stocking density that you should put in? And if you don't have the access to commercial feed, how can you, culture them? How do you feed them with, agriculture products? That's something like that. And I think that is something that we need to go back to the basic, yeah. Not only to go with high tech is have place for intensive or super intensive, but for very small, very limited resource and access, I think we need to, train them something very basic. Yeah, thank you.
I have a quick reply to that. Thanks. 6 years ago, I changed the way I train. So I used to come in with my package, you know, and it was fairly appropriate because I kind of know what people are wanting to know or what they need to know. But instead, I just said to everyone, just ask me the questions that you have. And we went around the group and they would just ask questions, just like you were saying. But I already knew what they were going to ask, so then we would categorize them. Okay, this one is on carrying capacity and stocking density. There's these questions on feed management, and there are these questions on fish health. It's always like that. And there's a few outside of the box ones, but they're all pretty much the same. So I would just have on my laptop those presentations. But the interesting thing about that was the farmers felt that they controlled the training. And so they listened much better for when their question came up. So it was the same information I got to them that I was planning on, but the way that we set it up turned out to be much, much better than what we used to do. So yeah, and there's still a lot of basic misunderstandings. By the way, if you want appropriate technology, a Secchi disc can get you very far in phytoplankton densities and morning dissolved oxygen. So we could tell you more about that. I have some slides on that I'm trying to find on my computer to share.
Fantastic. Can I ask a question? Once I was having a discussion with Jens, and Jens, you have to help me here. We were talking about this drone question and satellite-based and outdating thing. It's going in a different direction. And you were telling me that the way the satellite takes picture and you get all that, at the end of the day with the wind moving and the clouds moving, everything changes so fast that the whole data is not making. Can you help a little bit on that?
The attempt was, or the idea was once to get an algae detection by satellite pictures in order to support on a larger areas group of smallholders regarding their pond. So if you know where the pond is, if you can take a satellite picture, and if you then can analyze the chlorophyll content, then you can probably not even detect the quantity of algae you have in the pond, but also the type of algae you have in the pond. And I talked to several people and they said, yeah, this is, it's theoretically possible, but it'll change. And if you want to have, I need a satellite picture now, is also becoming very costly. There's of course free sources available, but they are not there every 20 minutes. And therefore we said, nah, this is a too tough one. And due to the light and to the wind and to the waves, it's very difficult. You can't always take a picture and quantify concentrations of algae. That's at least my understanding.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're almost at 6 o'clock, but I can't be rude because I know Francis has also his hand has been twitching. Francis, would you like to perhaps ask the last question of today's session?
Just a comment back to the small-scale definition. Yeah, we can't just have a black box. I mean, it's part of a problem framing process that you have to start with a problem and a requirement, whether it's development, or whatever it is, and then work back a typology there. So in this case, you know, we've been talking very much about farm management. AI is part of farm management solutions, but you've been talking about chlorophyll A. That could also be used for something for cumulative impacts at a landscape level in shared resources. So, you know, the incentives for looking at HABs or eutrophication impacts and collective better coordination of the mitigation of externalities. It may be worth thinking, just from a certification point of view, there's a clear cutoff point that empirically might be quite useful. There is a level below which it's rare to see certification, you know, for species and system specific, but it's there. And, you know, this comes out in kind of group management options and different ways of trying to push the level down a little bit more. And so in certification, you've got group management options with or without internal management systems. With internal management systems mean that you've got the certificate holder is a larger scale entity. And therefore, you can start thinking about how you get those to leverage the benefits for their 2, 3, 4 normally memberships with other smaller group certification. It becomes more challenged because it's an internal management system. But then we've got to think about how we leverage this in terms of wider sort of ESG and corporate social responsibility obligations, and try and get companies on board to actually include this as part of those philanthropic or strategic sort of engagements.
Thank you. Anton, I saw a sudden convulsion there in response for...
Just very quickly responding to this small-scale question, I think it's interesting and valid, but I go back to my very first point, and thanks for indulging me for the last point, Andy, as well. It's perhaps not so much specifically about scale, but it's that value proposition and who wants the data and for what. And I think if we think about it from that perspective, it really makes us think about why we would want to develop a piece of technology. So ask a farmer what kind of data they'd want and what value they would place on getting that data. In your example, Francis, I think an internal management system in a group certification scheme would mirror that kind of demand somewhere for data at a certain level, but many farmers don't need that on a daily basis. On the plus point, I think there are plenty of technology companies out there who are working very hard on automating as much of this as possible, because farmers don't want to spend the time inputting data. It's just seen as another cost, basically, the time that you'd spend doing it, even if we think it's very minimal, right? So automating it and then bringing it together is exciting. There are companies doing that, and we might get to that big data set at some point, because someone else mentioned earlier, I think, we don't have big data yet in aquaculture, no matter how we kid ourselves.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're already past our time, but I can still see some hands going up. Perhaps I can just say, again, it's not too late to join this discussion. If you want to join, please let us know. We'll make sure your name is added to the email list so you can follow the discussion. Please add to it. If you've got case studies or you've got points to make, then please do so. Just before I close, any final comments from the panel? Just to Karen, you'd like to?
I was just saying up here, when I was managing the ponds at Auburn, I had to turn in a report twice a year on my inventories, my acreage, to the USDA. And I never dared ask what happened if I didn't do it. But it turns out, so the USDA they got a law passed that said any of their agents that share individual farm data with anybody else goes to jail. And that was to allow, give people the confidence they weren't going to go directly to the tax service and share the data. They can share the aggregated data of all the farmers. And in fact, anybody who did fill in the data or the record sheet would get a aggregated data for the state and the region back. If I was late filling it in, they'd give me a friendly call and said, they just would say, just from the top of your mind about how many acres do you have, because the farmer usually knows better than someone else trying to collect the data. So they tried to make it as easy as possible, and that helped. But having that law really impressed the other Africans that I took to these conferences, because they said, oh boy, if we had that, then that would make life a lot easier for us. We would probably get a lot more information.
Thanks, Karen. Just last quick word that, AI has its positive and negative, we know. We have a PhD thesis written by ChatGPTs these days. So that's the other side of AI as well. And of course, the positive side we also know. So taking a critical look, and a business case, just certainly we need that. But if government comes in, then that equation, as I said, is taken out of the whole thing. And in case of government, I think it's more about information sharing, which is helping quite a lot of small-scale and mass-scale farmers. And the more we get data from there, I think that could be one start. Thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think we've certainly made a start, but the discussion will go on, as Andy said, and people are welcome to join, and everybody online as well. We've had a fantastic discussion that's probably overrun by quite a bit of time, but I'd just like to thank my other panel members, you as your interesting contributions and engaged audience, and everybody online as well. So thank you very much, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the moderators and the participants for such a lively session. I'm pretty sure we will now all go home with something new. With this, we come to the end of the second day of AquaSustain 2024. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the speakers and the presenters for such insightful, invaluable information that you've shared with us today. The moderators for ensuring that the conference proceeds as smoothly as it did. The participants for your active participation and for some very thoughtful pieces of advice. And finally, the committee who are here, some are here and some are actually behind the scenes. We couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great evening ahead. Thank you so much.